The Villa Capri restaurant in Los Angeles, 1962. Frank Sinatra's private table in the back. The Rat Pack is having dinner. Frank, Dean, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, the most powerful men in Hollywood. The waiter, a kid, maybe 22 years old, brings Frank's steak. Frank cuts into it, looks up. His face darkens. "This is medium. I said rare. Are you deaf or just stupid?" The kid stammers an apology. Frank throws his napkin on the table. "Get the manager, now. I want you fired." The waiter's eyes fill with tears. Everyone at the table looks away. This is Frank being Frank. You don't stop Frank. Then Dean Martin speaks. Not loud, not angry, just matter of fact. "Frank, the kid made a mistake. Let it go." Frank turns to Dean, surprised. "Stay out of this, Dean." Dean leans back in his chair, completely calm. "No, I'm not staying out of it. You're being a bully. Shut your mouth and eat your damn steak." The entire restaurant froze. Because nobody talks to Frank Sinatra like that. Context building. Who was Frank Sinatra in 1962? The most feared man in Hollywood. To understand the magnitude of what Dean Martin did that night, you need to understand who Frank Sinatra was in 1962. Frank wasn't just a singer or an actor. He was power incarnate. He had connections to studio heads, politicians, and, according to persistent rumors, organized crime figures. When Frank wanted something, it happened. When Frank was angry, people disappeared from his life, permanently. Frank's temper was legendary in Hollywood. There are countless stories of Frank exploding at people, photographers, journalists, waiters, even fellow performers. He once punched a reporter who asked him an unwelcome question. He had people banned from venues. He ended careers with a phone call. And the thing about Frank's temper was that nobody stopped him. Nobody told him he was wrong. Because challenging Frank Sinatra meant risking everything. Your friendship with him, your career, your reputation. Frank expected loyalty. And loyalty meant standing by him even when he was in the wrong. The Rat Pack understood this better than anyone. The group, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, was the coolest, most powerful clique in entertainment. They performed together in Las Vegas, made movies together, partied together. But make no mistake, Frank was the leader. What Frank said went. The others might joke around, might tease him affectionately. But when Frank was serious, everyone fell in line. Almost everyone. Dean Martin was different. Dean had his own career, his own success, his own identity separate from the Rat Pack. He didn't need Frank the way the others did. He loved Frank. They were genuine friends. But Dean wasn't intimidated by him. And that made their relationship unique. The setup. The Villa Capri, Frank's kingdom. The Villa Capri was Frank's favorite restaurant in Los Angeles. It was an Italian place in Hollywood, intimate, exclusive. Frank had a regular table in the back where he could see the entire room but maintain privacy. When Frank came to Villa Capri, the staff knew to treat him like royalty. His drinks appeared before he asked. His food was prepared exactly to his specifications. Any deviation was unacceptable. On this particular night in late 1962, Frank was at his usual table with Dean, Sammy, and Peter. They'd just finished performing at the Sands in Las Vegas and had flown back to Los Angeles that afternoon. They were in good spirits, laughing, telling stories, decompressing after their shows. The waiter assigned to their table was named Michael Romano. He was young, maybe 22, and relatively new to Villa Capri. He was nervous serving the Rat Pack, who wouldn't be, but he was trying his best. He took their orders carefully, writing everything down, double-checking details. Frank ordered a steak. Rare, he specified. I want to hear it moo when I cut into it. Michael nodded and wrote it down. When the food came out, everything seemed fine at first. Dean was enjoying his pasta, Sammy was working on his chicken, Peter was having fish. Frank cut into his steak, took one look at the pink interior, and his expression changed. Dramatic reveal, the confrontation. "What is this?" Frank said, his voice dangerously quiet. Michael, who'd been about to walk away from the table, froze. "Is something wrong, Mr. Sinatra?" "Wrong. You brought me a median steak. I ordered rare. Are you deaf or just stupid?" The kid stammered an apology. Frank threw his napkin on the table. "Get the manager, now. I want you fired." Michael looked like he was about to cry. He was standing there, frozen, not knowing what to do. The entire restaurant was watching now. Everyone could see Frank Sinatra berating this young waiter, and everyone was doing what people always did in these situations, staying silent. "Well," Frank said to Michael, "are you going to stand there like an idiot, or are you going to get the manager?" Dean Martin put down his fork. He'd been eating quietly, watching the situation unfold. Now he leaned back in his chair and looked at Frank. Dean said calmly, "Frank, the kid made a mistake. Let it go." Frank turned to Dean, surprised. It wasn't often that someone interrupted him mid-tirade. "This doesn't concern you, Dean. I'm handling it." "You're not handling anything, Frank. You're bullying a kid over a steak." "I ordered it rare." "I don't care how you ordered it. It's a piece of meat. You're acting like he killed your dog. Let the kid take it back to the kitchen and bring you a new one, or eat this one, but stop screaming at him like he committed a crime." The table had gone completely silent. Sammy was staring at Dean with wide eyes. Peter looked like he wanted to disappear. Michael, the waiter, was still standing there, not sure if he should leave or stay. Frank's jaw tightened. "Dean, I said stay out of it." Dean didn't blink. "No, I'm not staying out of it. You're being a bully, Frank. You're embarrassing yourself and everyone at this table. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to shut your mouth, and you're going to eat your damn steak, and you're going to leave this kid alone." The entire restaurant had gone silent. At the nearby tables, people were frozen with their forks halfway to their mouths. The bartender had stopped pouring drinks. The kitchen staff had emerged from the back to watch, because something impossible was happening. Someone was standing up to Frank Sinatra. Emotional fallout, the silence that changed everything. Frank stared at Dean. His face was flushed with anger, but there was something else there too. Surprise, maybe calculation. He was trying to decide how to respond. Everyone at the table knew that how Frank reacted in the next few seconds would define what happened next. Dean didn't look away. He met Frank's gaze steadily, calmly. There was no fear in Dean's eyes, no hesitation, just a simple, clear message: back down. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. It felt like an eternity. And then, incredibly, Frank Sinatra smiled. Not a warm smile, not a friendly smile, but a smile of acknowledgement. A smile that said, "Okay, Pally, you win this one." "All right, Pally," Frank said quietly. He picked up his knife and fork. "I'll eat the damn steak." Dean nodded and went back to his pasta. The waiter, Michael, stood there for another moment, not sure what to do. Dean looked up at him and gave him a small, reassuring smile. "The steak's fine, kid. Mr. Sinatra's just particular. You can go." Michael nodded quickly and practically ran back to the kitchen. The rest of the dinner was tense. Frank ate his steak in silence. Sammy and Peter made awkward small talk, trying to ease the tension. Dean ate calmly, as if nothing had happened. After dinner, as they were leaving, Frank pulled Dean aside. The others went ahead to the car, giving them privacy. "You made me look like an asshole in there," Frank said. "You were being an asshole in there. I just pointed it out." Frank laughed, a real laugh this time. "You're the only one who dare talk to me like that, you know?" "I know." "Why do you do it? Why risk pissing me off?" Dean shrugged. "Because someone has to tell you when you're wrong, and nobody else will. They're all too scared of you." "You're not scared of me." "Should I be?" Frank thought about that. "No, I guess not. That's why we're friends, isn't it? You don't kiss my ass." "That's why we're friends," Dean agreed. Frank put his arm around Dean's shoulders. "You're still a pain in my ass, though." "Someone has to be." The deeper meaning, the Rat Pack power dynamic, why Dean could do what others couldn't. This story, the night Dean Martin told Frank Sinatra to shut up, became legendary among those who witnessed it. The staff at Villa Capri talked about it for years. Other Rat Pack members referenced it in later interviews. It became the defining example of Dean and Frank's unique relationship. But here's what most people don't understand about why Dean could do what he did that night. It wasn't just about courage or friendship. It was about the specific dynamic between Dean and Frank. Frank needed people to fear him. His power came from intimidation, from the knowledge that he could end careers and ruin lives. But deep down, Frank respected strength. He respected people who wouldn't back down. And more importantly, Frank knew that Dean didn't need him. The other members of the Rat Pack, as talented as they were, needed Frank's approval and support. Sammy Davis Jr., despite being an incredible performer, faced racism in Hollywood and relied on Frank's protection. Peter Lawford needed Frank's connections. Joey Bishop needed the exposure. But Dean Martin? Dean had his own hit records, his own successful movies, his own TV show. Dean's career would be fine with or without Frank Sinatra, and Frank knew it. Which meant that when Dean spoke, it wasn't coming from a place of fear or obligation. It was coming from genuine friendship and genuine concern. Dean was willing to tell Frank the truth because he had nothing to lose. Sammy Davis Jr. later talked about that night in an interview. "I saw Dean do something that night that I could never do," Sammy said. "I watched him look Frank in the eye and tell him to shut up. And Frank did it. He actually shut up. I realized then that Dean had a kind of power over Frank that the rest of us didn't have. It wasn't about intimidation or connections. It was about respect. Frank respected Dean in a way he didn't respect anyone else." Peter Lawford said something similar. "Frank loved all of us in the Rat Pack, but Dean's approval. If Dean thought Frank was being a jerk, Frank cared about that. The rest of us, Frank could dismiss our opinions, but not Dean's. Never Dean's."
The pattern. Dean as Frank's conscience. The incident at Villa Capri wasn't isolated. There were other times over the years when Dean checked Frank's behavior. Once, at a recording session, Frank was berating a sound engineer who couldn't get the levels right. Dean walked into the booth and said, "Frank, the guy's doing his best. Either help him or shut up and let him work." Frank shut up. Another time, Frank was complaining about a director on a film they were making. He was loud, obnoxious, undermining the director in front of the crew. Dean pulled him aside and said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Either work with the guy or walk away, but stop being a prima donna." Frank adjusted his behavior. Dean was Frank's conscience in a way. Dean was the voice that said, "You're being unreasonable, you're being cruel, you're being a bully." And because Dean was saying it, Frank listened. But it's important to note that Dean didn't do this to assert dominance or to embarrass Frank. Dean did it because he genuinely cared about Frank and didn't want to see his friend act beneath himself. Dean believed that Frank was better than his worst impulses, and by calling out those impulses, Dean was helping Frank be the person he was capable of being. Years later, after Frank died in 1998, Dean's daughter, Deanna, talked about her father's relationship with Frank. "My father loved Frank," she said, "but he loved him enough to tell him when he was wrong. A lot of Frank's friends were yes men. They'd laugh at his jokes, agree with his opinions, enable his bad behavior. My father wasn't like that. My father would say, 'Frank, you're being an idiot, stop it.' And Frank respected him for it." Full circle. Michael Romano, the waiter who never forgot. As for Michael Romano, the young waiter who'd brought Frank the wrong steak, he went on to have a long career in the restaurant industry. Decades later, in an interview, he was asked if he remembered that night. "Remember it?" Michael said. "I think about it all the time. I thought my life was over. I thought I'd just lost my job and humiliated myself in front of the most powerful people in Hollywood. And then Dean Martin stood up for me. He told Frank Sinatra to back off. For me, a nobody waiter who'd screwed up his order. I'll never forget that, and I'll never forget the lesson I learned that night. Real class isn't about power or fame. Real class is about standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves." That's the legacy of the night Dean Martin told Frank Sinatra to shut up. It's not just a story about a dinner gone wrong. It's a story about friendship, courage, and what it means to use your power for good. Dean Martin was the coolest man in show business, but that night he proved that being cool doesn't mean staying silent when someone is being cruel. It means having the courage to speak up, even when speaking up might cost you everything. Frank Sinatra was the most feared man in Hollywood, but that night he showed that even the most powerful people need someone in their life who will tell them the truth, someone who loves them enough to say, "You're wrong and you need to stop." And in the end, that's what made their friendship so special. Dean kept Frank honest. Frank gave Dean loyalty. And together, they showed the world that real friendship isn't about agreeing all the time. It's about caring enough to challenge each other, to call each other out, to be better because of each other. The night Dean Martin told Frank Sinatra to shut up wasn't just about a steak or a waiter. It was about two men who loved each other enough to be brutally honest. And in Hollywood, where honesty is rare and courage is even rarer, that kind of friendship was revolutionary.